Okay, I'm going to go over a brief presentation that I've prepared as a part of the upcoming second debate that I'm going to publish on my YouTube channel real soon. So just to do this at a little bit of a slower pace and give you guys a chance to see this on its own. Here we go. So what you really should know about tropical versus sidereal zodiacs is that they're exactly the same thing. The only way that they disagree is in defining where 0 degrees Aries actually is. And by defining 0 degrees Aries, you define where any border of any sign is. Okay. Otherwise, they have the same exact concept of which planets rule which signs, which modes are in which signs, which elements are in which signs, how many signs there are, what size there are. Everything is exactly the same. Now, we agree. Okay, where's my next point? It should be coming out. I guess my computer's going a little slow. Okay, so the two concepts of where the signs begin. The first concept is called sidereal because it's based on a sidereus. It's based on a star. So they'll say something like, see that star over there? And that's where Aries begins. Though what they actually wind up saying is, you see that star over there, now count this many degrees from it, and that's where Aries begins, because there is no big notable star on the ecliptic where 0 degrees Aries is supposed to be. The other school of thought, the tropical school of thought, is called tropos. Tropical because it's based on tropos. Tropos means a waypoint or a turning point or a marker in the sun's journey. So the sun's going to have 4 tropos. One is going to be where it's right over the Earth's equator. Actually, 2 of them are going to be where it's right over the Earth's equator. And the other 2 are going to be where it's the furthest north or the furthest south of the equator. So those are the 4 tropos, and you build the tropical zodiac based on those. With the sidereal zodiac, you build it based on a star. That's the different points of view, excuse me. Now, let me show you, because most of this debate is revolving around what Indian tradition really thought of as the zodiac. Did it think of it as a tropical thing or a sidereal thing? So let me explain to you this one key reference from Surya Siddhanta. Siddhanta, it means the name of a book. If a book is named Siddhanta, it means that it's the conclusion of some philosophy. And typically it means it's an astronomical book, a bunch of mathematical conclusions. So Surya Siddhanta is probably the most important Siddhanta in Indian history, the most important astronomy book in Indian history. Let us see how this book defines the zodiac. So it defines the zodiac in chapter 14, 7 through 10. And here's the definition. The definition talks about a bachakra. Bachakra means the wheel, chakra, of the sky, ba. So the sky wheel is celestial wheel. Then it talks about the nubbi of this wheel, the hub of this wheel. It wants to locate the hub. And that's very important because wheels are based on their hubs. And they rotate on their hub. So the way the hub moves causes the wheel to move. So if you define the hub, you define what the wheel is affixed to. It says that you can locate the hub of the wheel of the sky if you can locate the 2 Vishuvat, which are the 2 equinoxes. And then what you need to do is draw a line between them, Samasutrika. Now, next, also locate the 2 Ayanams, which are the 2 solstices, and draw a line between them. At the point, the nubbi is located where those 2 lines cross. So here, the Surya Siddhanta has located the nubbi, or the hub of the wheel of the sky, the hub of the zodiac. Well, let's just say the hub of the wheel of the sky. It's located it by saying that it is always at the intersection between the line that goes between the equinoxes and the solstices. And these 4 points, 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices, are really pratitastuti. They're very famous, they're very glorified, they're very important. You can't ignore these 4 points. Now, then it says, Tad Antareshu, in between each one of these points, make a Sankranti, which is a border. And you guys are definitely familiar with the word Sankranti, I believe, because it means the border of signs, the way we use this word in astrology. Tad Antareshu Sankranti Dvitiyam Dvitiyam Punaha. 2 and 2 again. So this is what it means. Between each of them, you make 2 borders. And now you get this. And now this really looks familiar, doesn't it? So I bet you this Bachakra, wheel of the sky that they're talking about, is the zodiac wheel, isn't it? Now it says Panur, which means the sun, Makara Sankranti, which means the border of Capricorn, Sanmasu Uttarayanam. It starts 6 months going up. So in other words, the sun climbs from the border of Capricorn for 6 months. So you notice there's 12 divisions altogether, right? And there's 12 months in a year. And we got 6 over here. So it's going to start at this border right here. This border right here defines 0 degrees Capricorn. And if you define 0 degrees Capricorn, you define 0 degrees Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, everything. Because every sign is 30 degrees equally. So it's saying the point at which the sun begins to go Uttara, this point at which it starts to go up, and the ayana at which it begins to go up, which means the solstice at which the sun begins to move north, which is this solstice down here, the southern solstice. That's when the sun starts heading north. That is the border of Capricorn. That is the Sankranti for Makara. That's the Makara Sankranti. That's the beginning of Capricorn. Now, you're also really familiar with Makara Sankranti because it's a very important holiday. Because it defines the zodiac in classical India. They didn't really do it with Mesh Sankranti, Aries 0 point. They did it with Capricorn 0 point. And it's also quite tragic that Makar Sankranti is celebrated sometime in January, when the solstice is sometime in late December, because of this whole sidereal problem. So anyway, this text is saying the border of Capricorn is at the southern solstice. Then it says it's going to climb for 6 months, and it's going to reach the border of Cancer, Karkadastu. And then once it reaches the border of Cancer, it's going to spend another 6 months descending back to the border of Capricorn. So there you go. It has affixed the zodiac divisions, which is mentioned by name, to the solstices primarily. Now it's going to say, it's talking about months. What do you mean months? It's going to say these months are the signs. Mesha Dil Dodashaste Masa Stare Vatsara. These months of the year are certainly Aries and so on. So here's your zodiac, as the Surya Siddhanta defines it. Doesn't reference a star at all, but it references the solstices and equinoxes to establish where the 0 degree or the starting marker is. In this case, it's 0 degree Capricorn. Okay, so it defines the zodiac as a wheel affixed to a hub, and that hub is defined by solstices and equinoxes, and the divisions are drawn from those solstices and equinoxes, so you get 12 Aries, etc. Very obvious, clear, tropical definition, and this is not a weird definition that's only found in Surya Siddhanta. It's found everywhere, in any place the zodiac is defined, including the Puranas. Whenever the Puranas have an astronomical section, they define it in the same way. You talk about the solstices and the equinoxes, and the way that to measure the solstices and equinoxes by the lengths of the days and the nights. So far, so good. Now, we have to talk about contradictions also, because it's not so clear. I mean, you would say, okay, case closed, then I guess India is totally crazy because everything in India just defines the zodiac as being tropical. So why are these guys so nuts and they're all doing sidereal? Well, it's not that simple. There is a reason why they're doing sidereal. It's because the same texts that define these signs being anchored to solstices and equinoxes, the next thing they do is they define them in relationship to a star, or they at least mention their relationship to a star. So, for example, famous statements are like that Aries and Ashwini start at the same point. So a text will say, hey, look, Capricorn 0 degrees is at the winter solstice that we say, right? We call it winter solstice, but it's the southern solstice. And the same text will say, and 0 Aries is at Ashwini. But that can't, it's a contradiction. One is saying the zodiac is based on a star, and one is saying the zodiac is based on an equinox or solstice. And they both can't be true at the same time, except about the exact time that those statements were made, about 2,000-ish years ago. Or let me say, at the exact time that those statements began to be made. So since the texts contradict themselves, and in one place they say Aries is defined by Ashwini, and at the other place they say Capricorn is defined by the solstice, you have to deal with the contradiction. How do you deal with this contradiction? Some people are going to say, look, that just shows that it's not just Indian astronomers, but this contradiction is basic. If in Mulapin in Babylon, they're also saying, hey, the equinox should be smack in the middle of that sign over there that we nowadays call Libra. The descending equinox should be smack in the middle of that. It's the way that they did it. They did 15 degrees. They did the equinoxes and solstices anchored to 15, to the middle of the signs. And then they said, oh, and also the stars, this particular star cluster corresponds to this equinox. So it's present in Western and Eastern ancient texts to define 12 divisions based on zodiacs, and then also define it in reference to stars. So some people are going to say, look, that just means that in the old days people were confused and they didn't know about the precession of the equinoxes and they were silly. I don't see it that way, honestly. I think that they weren't so confused. Of course, they were not as sophisticated as we are now, especially in terms of the tools that they had at their disposal, both theoretical tools like maths and physical tools like telescopes and ways of measuring things. However, I don't think they were confused. There's an actual necessity to mention the relationship between the stars and the signs. So you can define the signs as being divisions from the one equinox to the next. And then you can say, hey, look, this division Aries is related to this star Ashwini in such and such a way. You can and should and need to say that because they were trying to refine the math to be able to calculate where things would be amongst these 12 signs so that they could use these 12 signs extensively. And in order to develop those maths, they would have to visually check their calculations. In order to visually check your calculation, you need a visible star that's visible at the same time as the planet you're trying to calculate. So they correlated in the ancient world, or the classical world 2,000-ish years ago, they correlated the 12-fold equinotical divisions that we call the zodiac to stellar points and even to stellar constellations and things. So that's why you'll see that it's not a contradiction. They'll say the zodiac is a division from equinoxes and solstices, and those equinoxes and solstices are related to the stars in this way. And then they're also going to tell you something else, which is quite important. Let's see if I can get my next bit up here on the screen. Come on, I know you're coming. Here we go. Classical Indian texts define the zodiac division in reference to solstices and equinoxes, and then they also make note of the then current relationship between the stars or the Nakshatras and the signs. And then they also tell you, sometimes explicitly, as in Surya Siddhanta chapter 3, that this relationship is not permanent. That the stars will drift or change their relationship to those equinoctial markers. And this is what Ayana Amsha is all about. Ayana means solstice. So Ayana Amsha means how much space has solstice covered from the time that we marked it. That's what Ayana Amsha literally means. So it's not a contradiction at all that the texts are going to give you both a definition that appears sidereal and a definition that appears tropical. Because what they're saying is, look, here's the zodiac. It's based on the solstices and equinoxes. Here's how the zodiac is related to the stars right now. And here's the Ayana Amsha to figure out over time what the relationship between the stars and the signs will be. Okay? Let me see if you have any questions about that. So what I want you to take away from this is, let me see if I can close this and get back to this and switch this to something simpler so you don't get zapped into infinity. So what I want you to take away from this is that the classical ancient astronomers saw the 12-fold system, whether they were Indian or Western, they saw the 12-fold system as a division of the sun's path through the year, divided into 12 as a result of the months formed by the moon making its cycle. And they measured that year in terms of equinoxes and solstices, and therefore they anchored their 12-fold divisions of it to the equinoxes and solstices. Then in order to use it and calculate where the positions of planets would be in it, they referenced that division of the year to the stellar markers that correlated to where the equinoxes and solstices were at that time. Then they also noted that the stars don't have a constant relationship to those equinoxes and solstices. That's called precession of equinoxes, and they gave a value. Hipparchus was the first one to give a value for it. It's by which you could measure that ayanamsha at any given point in time, so you could know how far your marker star drifted from the actual solstice. So that's what I'm hoping you can digest today. And see if anybody's watching and see if you got any questions. Any questions? It's true, Raphael. Especially Surya Siddhanta, because actually Surya Siddhanta doesn't really even come and say at any point that Aries and Ashwini come together. But a good example of a contradiction is Varaha Mihira. Varaha Mihira will say in Brihad Jataka that Aries and Ashwini start together, and then he's going to say in Pancha Siddhantaka that Aries starts at an equinox and Capricorn starts at the solstice. Hey, Angel. Been a long time. So, Patricia, you say when you look up in the sky, the planets are in certain positions. This is sidereal astrology. Why is there so much debate? Please think about that carefully, because it's completely not true. So, on my YouTube channel, I have a series called Refutations of the Sidereal something or other, right? The third one in that series is exactly about this. That actually, if you look up at the sky, you do not see 12 equal-sized divisions. You see a bunch of dots of light. And when you divide them into things that you call Virgo, Pisces, etc., you do not get the zodiac that you use in astrology. You get Virgo being huge, Pisces being gigantic, Aries being tiny, Libra being small. You don't get 12 equal divisions. You get supposedly Chitra, it's the beginning of Libra. Supposedly Spica is the beginning of Libra, right? But when you look up in the sky with your eyes, Spica is right on Virgo's thigh, and she's still got all of her legs left. So get out of that false concept that sidereal astrology is what you actually see, so why are you guys arguing? It's partially true. Sidereal astrology is very friendly to the eye because it's based on stars and you can see stars. Okay, but it is not true that the zodiac can be seen in the sky there. There is actually, Christopher Burns wants to know if there's any record of Barney marking the beginning. No, there's no record of it. Their oldest records were Kritika marking the beginning. And then they seem to have been updated, and then the updating seems to have stopped once the equinox got into Ashwini. And currently the equinox is approaching Purva Bhadrapada. Anything else? Let me see if I can find you that link to that video that really clearly describes this. Let me see. Victor Cara. Google is so handy. I use it to find my own videos. Victor Cara. I think maybe I should put Sam Jeppy's name in there since it was a response to him. Sidereal. YouTube. Let's see what comes up. Come on, Google, I know you can help me. Here we go. Observable accuracy part 3 here. I can give you the link right now. Here's your link. So, Patricia, this is for you, particularly. Please get... Oh my God, what's that? That's a Japanese ad playing in front of my video. Okay. All right. Any other questions or things you want to say or bring up or argue about? Where are the Nakshatras originally mentioned? They're originally mentioned in the oldest books, Rig Veda. Does the sun, and also Taittiriya Brahmana. Taittiriya Brahmana is the oldest full description of what the Nakshatras are. So, and I've translated the portions of the Taittiriya Brahmana that are about Nakshatra Sutras, and you can get it from Amazon.com. It's called Nakshatra, the Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology. That's the name of the book. Does the sun or moon's nakshatra in one's natal change based on the tropical? No, you see, the nakshatras are stars, they're sidereal, and the signs, just the equinox was once in Kritika. So that means that at that time, Aries, which begins with the equinox, was beginning with Kritika. Then 2,000 years ago, when things became more codified, the equinox was in Ashvini. So at that time, Aries and Ashvini coincided. Now Aries is in Bhadrapada, Uttar Bhadrapada. Amitanshu Satyarthi also has an interesting question. I'm not going to skip your question, son. Oh, but Shakti, so never try to treat the nakshatras as a tropical thing. Sidereal, the nakshatras are intrinsically, unalterably a sidereal thing. But the zodiac signs are not sidereal. Amitanshu says, are nakshatras older than the zodiac? No. There are these concepts of how to divide space and time are eternally co-old, co-ancient. But the use of the 12-fold zodiac in ancient times, in ancient recorded history, is very limited because of the lack of mathematics to be able to calculate where these things would be, where the planets would be. So in very ancient times, the tropical system was mainly used for timing rituals only and for making the basic calendar. Whereas the sidereal zodiac was a lot easier to use. You could use it to make divination much more easy because you could look up at the sky and see, Saturn is with this star. So the nakshatras aren't older, but the older astrology used nakshatras much more extensively than it did with the zodiac. I agree, Angel. I like that too about it. Son, once you answered how Revati Nakshatra changed from Pisces to Aries, there's a clear indication. Push from Cancer to Leo. This is really good points. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about too. You can see how, historically speaking, you don't get good parenting and good relationships during certain periods of time when certain nakshatras like Revati are in signs like Aries, as it is now. So if Sidereal was founded 1,000 years before, would it be entirely different? Probably. Yeah, that's a theoretical question. Does the Sidereal zodiac, if they came up with the math historically sooner than they did, then they would have had different marker stars correlating to it. Daisy is having Jeshta bad. It's terrible. No, you need to learn how to work with anything that you have. And everything can be bad and good. You need to learn more about Jeshta. And you also need to think about your concept of good and bad. So you have a more useful concept of both the idea of good and bad and the idea of what things represent. nakshatras deal with the same energies as the zodiac? Define the same space? Yeah. No, they define a different space, actually. But the spaces are what Brihad Parashara Shastra calls tulya, or comparable. So the nakshatras define Swarga space, and the Rashis describe Bhuva space. The Rashis describe a space that the sun occupies, and the nakshatras define a space that the stars occupy. Okay. Anything else? You got me on a Saturday because I'm leaving, so you might not see me that much on the week because I'm going to be traveling. And also, let me mention, if you look in the text here, if you can see the description of the text, I don't know if you can see it now. I'm mentioning, this is a good question from No Limits. I'll answer that too. I'm going to do 3 courses when I get back from the beginning of November to mid-December, and I encourage you to look at that link that I just posted, victorkara.com/2019.php, so you can find out what these 3 courses are. A level 1 course about science, planets, and houses, a course about the nakshatras, and a course called Introduction to the Vedas. So please follow that link if you're interested in maybe signing up for those. So No Limit says, how come astrologers don't use true sidereal? Well, what is true sidereal? Meaning like kind of what Mrs. Ortiz said before, right? That you should be able to look up at the sky and it should be exactly what you see. Because the astrology is based, the zodiac signs are not created by the stars. Otherwise, it would be fine to just define them by the stars. The zodiac signs are 12 of equal sizes because the sun goes around once in a year and the moon goes around, makes 12 lunations, roughly 12 lunations. So you get the amount of space that the sun covers while the moon does its one lap is one sign. So you get 12 equal spaces. So there is no such thing as true sidereal zodiac, because the zodiac inherently isn't about clustering stars together. The zodiac is about the amount of space that the sun moves during a full moon cycle, one cycle from one full to the next, or from one new to the next, however you want to look at it. Now, if you want to do true astrology, true sidereal astrology, even nakshatras are not true sidereal astrology because they do the same abstraction with the moon. What they do is they take the amount of that the moon moves during a day, and each one of those amounts of space, 13 1/3 degrees, constitutes one sidereal zone. But those sidereal zones are defined in reference to stars. That's why they're sidereal. The closest thing to true sidereal astrology would be the way that they use fixed stars in Western astrology, or the way that they just used yogatars in ancient Indian astrology, which the yogatars are the defining stars of the nakshatra fields. So that would be where you look up and you say, well, look, that's Regulus and that's Jupiter. And Jupiter is right next to Regulus. So there, now make my interpretation. So that's the closest thing to true sidereal. And people do use that. It's quite important to fix stars. Would you say that some of the texts are outdated? No, but all of the texts are from cultural settings that are completely different. And they're written in a language and from a cultural viewpoint that's completely different than what we have today. So what you have to do is be able to translate them. So you have to have some intimacy and knowledge with the cultural and philosophical viewpoint of the ancients. And you have to have some translation ability to put it into your own modern one. Okay, Jenna. Anybody else? All right, guys. So I just wanted to pop on and show you this. Do me a favor if you're interested. Sign up for some courses. I want to get a bunch of students and have a really great course there. So, okay.